Hello and good morning. Welcome to Juneteenth live cast, a really important day in American history, and I'm glad that you all are here to join me for that day today. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Jamey here at Stonemaier Games, not headquarters, my home office. And as usual, I'm here to spend the next hour with you, answering your questions, talking about some random topics, and occasionally forgetting to put your comments on the screen. Just so I don't forget, because I sometimes do these days, chocolate of the day. Today's chocolate of the day, I think, will be one of the Stonemaier chocolates of the day. This is something that we did for April Fools a few months ago in April, and I am still enjoying some of the extras that we had left over from that. And doing some chocolate of the day today. Looks like the champion faction is going to join us for today's live cast. I hope you have Juneteenth off today. This is a federal holiday in the U.S., at least if you're in the U.S. If you're not in the U.S. and you're in Europe, are you paying attention to the Euros 2024, the European soccer tournament that's happening right now? I am. I love soccer, and so I love especially world stage soccer, English Premier League, not exactly world stage, but I pay attention to that. I love Champions League. I also really love following the Euros and the World Cup, men's and women's. And so I'm really enjoying this tournament. I am doing a little bracket right now where I picked a friend put together this thing where we picked a different team from 5 different tiers, not different groups, but different tiers. And the teams that I picked, not necessarily saying I'm rooting for these teams, but these are just the teams that I'm just looking for good soccer for the most part. But I'm rooting for, based on my picks, I'm rooting for England, Italy, Hungary, the Czech Republic, and Slovakia to do well in this tournament, but just for fun. I'm happy for anyone to do well. Let's see. David's here today. It's David who works on Automa stuff. George is probably happy about this. Romania won 3-0. Big showing from Romania in the Euro tournament. Yeah, a lot of people are off for today. Thank you for joining me today on your day off. I see Christian got his copy of Gears of Corruption. At this point, if you're a champion, you should have a shipping update. And if you're not a Stonemaier champion, that you should get a shipping update this week for Gears of Corruption. That is the new Expeditions expansion right here. Excited to get this to you. And for those of you who weren't able to get it because we didn't make enough, we weren't too far off, but we didn't quite make enough. We are making more. We're working on a reprint now. It'll take a few months, but we will have a reprint soon. Scott, I mentioned the show The Devil's Plan recently on Netflix. A really kind of a pretty thinky game competition show, reality competition show. And Scott said he's enjoying it. I'm glad you're enjoying that, Scott. We really had a good time watching that. Are you watching it with English subtitles, or are you doing the dubbing? We did subtitles, and it took quite a bit of brain power to understand the games and read the subtitles, but it was worth it, I think, in my opinion. Tim asked if I've started watching The Acolyte. I haven't yet. Right now, we're watching the Big Door Prize Season 2. We're watching the current season of Top Chef, and we're watching Dark Matter. Both Top Chef and Dark Matter, I think, will wrap up tomorrow. I also love watching American Ninja Warrior in the summer. That's a summertime show here. But I soon will watch The Acolyte. I think that my upcoming science fiction shows include The Acolyte and The 3-Body Problem. Need to watch those too. And I've been watching a little bit of Black Mirror recently, the latest season. I'm a little bit behind. I think it came out last year, but I'm really enjoying some of the episodes of the Black Mirror. It's a little darker than I remember the show being. Like, I know it's always been a little bit of dark humor and dark concepts, but this last season has kind of delved a little bit into horror, which isn't really my taste. There have been some scenes that I've skipped through a little bit, but yeah, overall still a great show. Twilight Zone type show. Jeff says, how do you keep finding great shows to recommend? I watched all The Devil's Plan this past week and it was amazing. I'm glad. Well, the reason I get it is that I have good recommendations from friends like Miles, who is here. Here's Miles. Miles always gives me some good show recommendations. That's how you get the good shows that I mentioned. Let's see. Ray says, you'll probably like his chocolate of the day. My wife made him homemade creme de menthe truffles for Father's Day, and they were and are delicious. That sounds delicious, Ray. And happy Father's Day to everyone. That's the topic I wanted to talk about today. I should mention, oddly, one of the types of chocolate that I enjoy but can't eat is chocolate and mint. You'll probably have never seen me mention chocolate and mint because mint gives me migraine headaches. It has for years. So I can't eat mint. And so I don't get to enjoy chocolate mint, even though as a kid, I loved peppermint patties. I loved Andy's mint chocolates, but they give me headaches now. So I can't eat chocolate and mint, unfortunately. I see a bunch of people mentioning expeditions. I'm always happy to hear that. Chad says the Dark Matter drops on Tuesdays. I had that in my head as a Thursday show. That's awesome, Chad. Okay, well, that's great. We'll be watching. We'll probably watch an episode tonight then, if it aired yesterday. Yeah, that's awesome. Jean-Baptiste says, from the U.S., do you follow European disc golf? Absolutely, yeah. Last weekend was the Turku Open. Nicholas Antala won. Well, I don't want to spoil anything. I'll take this off the screen in case I don't want to spoil anything, Jean-Baptiste. But I did watch that. I watched the highlights at least. And without spoiling anything that no one already caught, Antala, his putting was absolutely incredible. So we're talking disc golf here. There was a big tournament in Europe this past weekend. And Antala hit two putts that were kind of once-in-a-lifetime putts. They were absolutely incredible putts in the last round for a comeback. I won't say if he won or not, but in that last round, Antala had some amazing putts. It was fun to watch James Proctor play. I really, really liked James Proctor. It was fun to watch him play. Yeah. It's probably not a spoiler for most people here, but I just want to avoid spoilers if someone's catching up on that tournament. Sean mentioned Shogun as an excellent show, and I agree. Shogun was absolutely incredible. We enjoyed that fairly recently. I'm reading right now. I'm reading a book called Fight Me. Fight Me is by, I may have mentioned it last week. I think I started it last week, but it's a show about superhero, or not a show. It's a book about superheroes, kind of. Superheroes, I think it's pitched as the Avengers meets the Breakfast Club, and I think that's a good description of it. Really enjoying that. I'm in like the last chapter of the book right now. I'm hooked. Jean-Baptiste mentioned the women's side of the Turku Open as well, and that was a great, thrilling finish as well. Again, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't watched it, but that was awesome. Yeah. Let's see. Joker ES says delicious in the dungeon dubbed has pros. Oh, okay. Oh, cool. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, that's really awesome. I'll have to. I haven't heard of Delicious in the Dungeon, but I'll have to check that out. Is that a cooking competition? Yeah. Miles is watching the Deal or No Deal Island, which I really enjoyed up fairly recently. It ended a few weeks ago. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Miles. Yeah, I thought you might enjoy that with your Survivor connection. What else was I going to mention there? About shows we're watching. I don't know what else I was going to say there. Something about disc golf, maybe. I played disc golf over the weekend. That was one of the things I did this past weekend. We played very early in the morning because it's very hot in St. Louis right now. And I got to see my friend Joe hit his first ace. Miles was there too. It was actually with a disc that Miles designed the art for. And it was awesome to see. Throwing an ace is incredible, but it's almost just as incredible to see your friend who's been playing for a long time, or I guess we've been playing every week for a couple of years now, to hit his first ace. So it was awesome to be witness to that on what was it, Saturday morning at Crestwood Park here in St. Louis. That was really cool. I can't remember the other thing I was going to say here for some reason. We were talking about Euros for a minute. I guess there isn't any other news about that. Oh yeah, I have a video game to talk about in a second, but let's see. I'll answer a few other questions first. Scott says, you mentioned that you would be interested in a 2 or 3 session tabletop role-playing game, and that's exactly where he is. Did you receive any recommendations as a result of that statement that you can share? I did, but I didn't write them down. One was, I think, Something in the Dark, maybe Shadows in the Dark. Maybe someone can refresh my memory on the name of that role-playing game. And I think it's either 10 Candles or 11 Candles, I think is a one-off role-playing game that I've heard good things about. So that's another one. If anyone has any recommendations of short campaign, like either 1, 2, or 3 session role-playing games, let us know. Always looking for recommendations about that to give them a try. Leon says their chocolate of the day will be Fizzy Wizzies, chocolate with strawberry popping candy in them. Got it from Wizarding World. Oh, that's fun. Did you have a good time at Wizarding World? Did you try the butter beer there? That's a place that I want to go someday. Nat Onova says, I read and shared the Stonemaier article on digital games. Quite a few comments on it on Reddit. Oh, that's neat. I'm very rarely on Reddit. Did you foresee digital adaptations of tabletop games growing, or do I foresee it growing a lot as a sector? I do. I think that will continue to be a big part of the tabletop game space. I think we've already seen it, especially with Board Game Arena. And really, one of the delights for me, because up until I started using Board Game Arena, I would play. The only times I would play digital board games, was against the AI on apps, like Lords of Waterdeep. So that's how I learned Small World. And I think that's great. I think that's a great format. I mean, we have many versions of our games on full AI digital apps like Viticulture, Charterstone, Wingspan, Scythe. And I think that's been great for people who want to play those games. And it was great for me too. But I actually really like that Board Game Arena connects people who want to play games. Those apps do it too. But I think Board Game Arena is built specifically to play with other people. And I've really enjoyed that experience. I've enjoyed hopping on Discord and playing on Board Game Arena with people around the country, even around the world. So I think I'm happy to see that the human connection side of tabletop games is continuing and is growing even in that digital space, because that's what's really important to me. I think in the gaming space, even solo gaming is a social thing. So a lot of solo gamers talk about what they're playing with other solo gamers, which I think is really, really cool. Hey, Tim, good of you to join us today. I thought of you the other day, Tim, in the grocery store. They have a whole rack of Liquid Death right now at our grocery store, which is a drink that you recommended. I still need to try it. I need to look at the ingredient list to see exactly what's in this interestingly named drink that you enjoy. But yeah, I appreciate the recommendation. Hilder says, fellow migraine person here, I'm sorry to hear that you suffer from migraines too, Hilder. Migraine triggers are so different for people. I can't eat chocolate or I get a migraine. You can't eat mint, but can eat chocolate. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there are a lot of different triggers. I started getting migraines around the time that I went through puberty, when I was, 12, 13. And at the time, it was a lot of trial and error to figure out why I was getting them. For me, it's tied to eating. Like, for the most part, overall, it's tied to eating regularly. I need to eat regularly. I need to have a normal amount of sleep. For me, and I need to stay hydrated. Those three things prevent most headaches for me. But there are triggers like mint, olives have had that impact on me. White wine has had that impact on me. And I may have grown out of it at some of these and haven't tried them in years because I really don't like getting migraines. But yeah, something that I have to continue to be aware of, because getting a migraine can really shut me down. Hilder, I'm sure you've experienced that. It's hard to do anything when you're in that much pain. Yeah. Gigantor 18 says the Scarecrow mech in their Ironclad edition arrived having detached itself from the base. I'm really sorry about that. We have heard that way more often than we would like to hear. I don't think it's a manufacturing default. I think it's just there's a lot of tension based on the packaging, the way that we decided to package it, on the base and where the mech connects with the base. Where it was originally glued. So I'm sorry to hear yours came unglued, and I appreciate you gluing it back together. That is, it literally will be good as new if you glue it back together, because it was originally glued together at the factory. Any idea if this happened with a large portion? Large portion, it's hard to say yet. If you've received Gears of Corruption, please open it to see the condition of your metal mechs. And please try glue first if you can. If you're not satisfied with the result, we can help out with replacement parts. But depending on the number of requests we get, we may not even have enough replacements at this time to replace all the metal mechs. So please try glue first. And Gigantor 18, I really appreciate you doing that. But so far it has happened with more metal mechs than we would like to see in a new product, for sure. Tony says, glad to see that you enjoyed charcuterie. We have really enjoyed it. I've played it twice so far. I posted about it on Instagram the other day. He says that his group also really liked it, and that his charcuterie boards are begging for a nice wooden upgrade. That would look pretty good. Although I think that they did a good job with the wood grain art on the boards. It looks fantastic. That's a good reminder to me to mention what I've played recently. I played Dune Imperium Uprising and Salton Sea at a friend's birthday game day on Saturday. Also played a message from the stars and the White Castle. And I set up, I feel bad because I was really looking forward to playing the White Castle again. and I was helping to set it up, and I messed up some of the tiles. I flipped over certain tiles. There's certain tiles in the White Castle that you have to flip one way and not the other way, and I flipped them the wrong way, and it messed up the game a little bit. We still had fun, but it definitely had a big impact on the game. I think one of those things that you can run into with a game if you have too many little fiddly bits that you need to set up in specific ways on the game board. But it was my fault. I messed it up. And the best, or not the best game, a game that I surprisingly was a surprising pleasure to me that I think one of you recommended on one of these live casts is called Blue Prince. So that's Prince as in like King, Queen, Prince. Blue Prince. It's a digital game, a Steam game. It's a tile drafting roguelike game where you are you enter a big house, a mansion, and you walk into a room and you're given 3 tiles to choose as what that room will be. So you select a tile. It'll look just like a tabletop game, like a Between Two Castles, a Mac and Ludwig style game, where you're choosing the tile. You'll put that tile down, and then you'll walk into that room and look at that room from a first-person perspective. And then you can explore that room. Sometimes you find little hidden things in that room. And then if there's an open door in that room, you can walk through that door and you get a new set of 3 tiles that you can draft, and you'll choose one of those tiles as that room. So it has really strong tabletop game elements. The goal is to fill a 5x9 grid with 45 different tiles and try to find the 46th room, which I still haven't beat the game. So I don't actually know how you find the 46th room. It doesn't fit into that grid. But it is a really neat challenge. And also a neat little twist in this game is that every time you walk into a room at all, not just the first time, but ever, whenever you walk into a room, you spend 1 footprint. You have a limited number of footprints that you can use. Eventually, you'll run out of footprints, or all your rooms will be closed off. You won't be able to enter another room, and you'll call it a day. And then you'll come back into the house the next day, and all the rooms will be gone, and you have to do it again and try to learn from that previous game. So it's this roguelike tile placement with a little bit of exploration. It's in a free demo right now on Steam, and I would highly recommend, or at least it was a few days ago. I'd highly recommend to all the gamers watching this, check out the game Blue Prince. It's a game that I'll definitely be buying when the full version is available, but the demo itself is really satisfying and really fun to play. I highly, highly recommend it. That was, probably the biggest surprise for me to play it recently. Let's see. The Champion Faction says, what's a decision you made for your own good that you regret halfway through? Well, that's a fun question. I think this is tied to a Champion's previous comment. I decided to spend $0 on games or accessories in 2025 to save money and play the games that I have. I love the idea of that. But with Wormspan, Gears of Corruption, and Garfield's Inventors of the South, Tigris, it's tough. Yeah, that's tough. So in 2020, so you all know all the big stuff that happened in 2020, or some of the big things, right? The pandemic started then. Going into 2020, I declared at the very beginning that I was not going to buy any more sweets. I was going to be okay with eating sweets, but I was not going to buy any more of them, which I thought would also limit the number of sweets that I eat. And so a few friends, like early on in the year, they gave us some sweet treats. And then the pandemic hit, and I was like, I'm going to enjoy something in life right now. And I went back to buying and eating chocolate. So it's something that I regretted like 2 months into trying to do it, and haven't really looked back. Still going with the sweet treats. I have a sweet tooth. As long as I do it in moderation, I think it's fine. Jokery says that Delicious in the Dungeon is an anime on Netflix about a kind of D&D party who decides to eat and cook the monsters in the dungeon. Okay, that's ringing a bell. I think you all have recommended that, or some people have recommended that in the past, and I need to check that out. That's really cool. Ian talked about last week how he was having some in-laws in to play some games, or not to play some games. They were planning to hopefully play some games. Played Can't Stop, Junk Art, Trash Talk. Got to 8 pieces of trash in Trash Talk. That's pretty impressive. And Ticket to Ride Paris. That's awesome. It's really cool that they're up for playing some games. I have a family reunion coming up in the near future, and I always try to bring some games that I think that they will enjoy there. But I need to be able to fly with those games. So I need to pick some games that pack well. I'll be going through that process soon. Before I forget, let me talk about the other topics that I listed in today's subject line. I talked about Juneteenth a little bit at the very beginning. That's today. Huge day in American history. Really important day. Father's Day. Father's Day was this past Sunday. And I did a blog post on Monday about some things that my dad who died from cancer back in 2022, I learned a lot from my dad over the years. And so I did a blog post on Monday about some of the things that I learned from my dad that I still try to apply to my business and to the way that I treat you and that I interact with you. So that's a blog post on Monday. Also did a blog post about, what was the blog post? I did a video about food and games, combining food and games meets well with charcuterie, which we mentioned a minute ago. And oh yeah, what do you do if you're, well, not what do you do? What can businesses do if for those who feel like their collection is complete, whether it's games? I use the example of disc golf in the blog post, but a lot of it applies to tabletop games as well. That was an interesting blog post to write. Yeah. Let's see. Chad says that he received his Kickstarter copy of Arcs. I know it's probably not your style of game, but you plan to play it at some point. I plan to try Arcs once. Yeah, it's one that I'll try once. I'm curious to see how it worked out. So Colton says Expeditions is a lot different than Scythe in the play style. I think that's kind of true, although every element of Expeditions is designed after the feeling of what you do in Scythe. Scythe is an engine building game about upgrading the different things that you do, taking a limited number of actions and racing towards the end to achieve glory. So they're actually pretty much every mechanism in Expeditions is designed by Scythe. Doesn't feel like a true sequel. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that doesn't feel like a true sequel. Expeditions, I designed it as a true sequel to Scythe. And I guess Colton's essentially asking, would I ever make a Scythe 2? And the answer is no, because Scythe already exists. You can continue to play Scythe for a long, long time. So I've already designed Scythe, already created it. It's already out there for you to play and enjoy. So hopefully you can continue to play Scythe and the many, many different expansions and variants and whatnot for years to come. All right, I just need to write. I've seen it recommended multiple times now. I'm just going to write down delicious in dungeon. Delicious in dungeon. Awesome. I'll have to check that out. Thank you for the recommendation. Christian says, did I watch the Croatia-Albania match that just finished? No, I didn't get to watch it. And I haven't really been watching the matches. I'm just watching the highlights afterward. There's a pretty good 5-minute highlight reel that pops up on YouTube on the Fox Sports channel on YouTube afterward. So I'm curious. I don't know what happened in that match. Don't spoil it for me. But I'm curious to see what happened in the Croatia-Albania match that just ended. Blades in the Dark. That's it, Ray. Thank you. Blades in the Dark, I think, is the short campaign game that someone recommended at some point. Josh just joining us today. Hey, Josh. Good to see you. Let's see. Mark says, have I tried the Nana Tori Dori game before recommending it? If not yet. I have not that I'm aware of. No, Nana Tori Dori. I don't think I've tried it, unless it's under a different name somehow. But no, I don't think I've tried that. Tim, I'm really excited about Emerald Skulls. I'm glad Tim's mentioned that. Tim mentioned that. I love push your luck games. I'm a sucker, especially for like small box push your luck games. And so I am very excited to try that from Thunderworks Games. Speaking of games in general, we did a pre-production playtest for a new Stonemaier game just yesterday. So whenever we get the PPC for a game, the pre-production copy, which looks like the final copy of the game, but it isn't actually. I sit down with my team and we play that version of the game. It's a really, really important step because it's something that you can't really emulate in a prototype. Actually interacting with the final, semi-final components of the game is a very different experience, I think, than interacting with a prototype of the game. So got some great feedback from Alex and Dave, and my friend Pete was available. So Pete joined us as well for this playtest. And yeah, just a really important step in the process. Carol says she gets migraines too. I'm sorry to hear about that, Carol. Stress could be part. Yeah, Carol mentioned stress. Yeah, different triggers for everyone, but I can see stress being a commonality. Darius says, have I ever tried going to a chiropractor for headache issues? I have been to a chiropractor a few times, and I've mentioned the headache issue. But I still have never had a good experience at a chiropractor. I know they vary widely based on the chiropractor, but I've not had a good experience with one yet. So I need to find one that I really like and trust in St. Louis and maybe give it a try. Yeah. Okay, Tim says that liquid death is just water other than their sparkling water and tea lines. Very few ingredients, not a lot of sugar. Love the marketing and the taste. And Tim, the reason that I want to check out the ingredient list is that one of my other migraine triggers is fake sugar, like sucralose or there are a few that are plant-based that are still that still do not work well for me at all. I'm forgetting a few of them, but yeah, fake sugars give me headaches really, really quickly. Oh, Chad still gets ocular migraines. I'm sorry to hear that, Chad. That's tough. Getting I think sensitivity to light and smells and sound is very normal for migraines, but I've never gotten the blind spot, and so I'm sorry to hear that you have to get that. You get that, and then the pain hits. Yeah, migraines are so painful. Thank you, Gage, for just mentioning the metal mechs. Thank you for taking the glue step and giving that a try. I really appreciate that. Let's see. I see some recommendations here. Charcuterie, Sky Team Solo. Oh no, Ivan has a migraine right now. Too many migraines here. What is it with us and migraines? I'm sorry to hear that, Ivan. Yeah, man, I really do feel your pain. Knowing what a migraine feels like, I feel your pain, Ivan. Everyone else who gets migraines in this chat, I am so sorry, and I hope you can figure out as many triggers as possible to prevent them. Sometimes it's just not preventable. Sometimes they just happen. I think. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Tim says, do you have more of a feeling about which version of Dune Imperium you would buy just coming to the game if I were new to the game? So currently I own Dune Imperium, and I have friends who own Dune Imperium Uprising. So I won't be buying Uprising. I'm glad that I have access to it. I really enjoy it. I also enjoy Dune Imperium. If I were completely new to the game, it's still a really close call, Tim, because I still really think the original game is fantastic. I have a great time with it. I am happy to introduce it to someone new. Dune Imperium Uprising is a little bit more complex. And so I think it depends maybe on the weight of gamer that you are. If you lean towards the heavy side of gaming, go for Dune Imperium Uprising. If you are a little bit more like me, a little more medium weight, go for Dune Imperium, the original Dune Imperium. If they're still making and selling it, I don't know if they've completely replaced it with Dune Imperium Uprising or not. I think technically, in terms of gameplay, I think probably Dune Imperium Uprising is the better game because they've learned from Dune Imperium to make Dune Imperium Uprising. I think the original is still really darn good. Yeah. Tim just finished My Island from Reiner Knizia. That's awesome. I played My City, but I haven't played My Island. And he's going to try to get his cousin to play a little more Charterstone. 12 games to Charterstone to get through the campaign. The games in on My Island and My City, I think, are a little bit faster. Corey has a question from Blue Falcon. Hey, he's heading to camp from now until Sunday. What are your suggestions for games to travel or camp with? Some games to travel or camp with. And I will throw out there as he makes suggestions, one thing to keep in mind for traveling and camping is that most likely the games will be on like a picnic table, exposed to the elements like wind. So I recommend picking games with heavier components. One that I'll throw out there, Corey, is Azul. I think Azul translates really well to the outdoors because there are, as far as I can recall, no cards in Azul. It's just the heavy tokens and the tiles. So fairly weather friendly. Ian says we should be only a couple days away from the reveal of the final Rolling Realms Redux realm. In fact, I was working on this update right before I had to go live for this. I might even send it up today. We'll see. So a lot of news actually in this Rolling Realms Redux update that I'll be sending out soon. If you follow that update, you'll get it. If you're in the Rolling Realms Facebook group, you'll also see it there. I'll post it there as well. I do know now I can announce publicly that we have locked in, although I guess it's always subject to change, but 99% sure the launch date for Rolling Realms Redux on the Stonemaier Games web store will be July 24th. So a little over a month from now, July 24th, will be the launch of Rolling Realms Redux on our web store, along with a hodgepodge of other things that I'll talk about as we get a little bit closer to then. Mostly back in stock stuff. Aerith is playing the 7th Citadel, which is still on our table. We haven't actually played it in a little while, but it's underneath our table. He says, I love it, but I'm also not all confident that I'm playing it correctly. Are there any games you love but aren't totally sure you're playing correctly? That's a good question. You know, Earthborn Rangers was a game like that. I'm not still playing Earthborn Rangers, but I am 95% sure that we were playing Earthborn Rangers correctly. But at the time where we decided it wasn't a game for us, we weren't going to keep playing it. Still wasn't entirely sure. Yeah, we're not entirely sure about that. I don't know if there's any game like that I play regularly that I am unsure about whether or not we're playing correctly, though. Nick 1700 says, is there anything in the works with licensing expeditions for digital? I've been enjoying solo plays with Gears and look forward to plays with my group. I believe, you know, someone asked this recently, and I looked up the answer and then promptly forgot it. Let's see if we have a digital agreement for expeditions. We do. We do. Yes. But it'll be a while. And I think the company isn't wanting to announce it yet because it's going to be a little while. But Expeditions has been licensed to a digital developer for them to work on. Yeah. Justin mentions as camping games, Love Letter and Guillotine, small box games. Mark's waiting. Here, I'll jump to this. So in in my subject line, I mentioned Taylor Swift, and this really should have been Taylor Swift and Caitlin Clark. So this is my question of the day. Let me throw that out there while we're talking. So a blog post that I've been considering is a topic about what strategies you can take as a creator, as a publisher, as a creator. I'll say as a creator, if someone in your industry, or not someone, if a game in your industry or product in your industry or person in this case is getting a disproportionate amount of the press or the media attention. And I don't say disproportionate in a negative way at all. I think Taylor Swift is absolutely deserving of all the press that she gets. I think Caitlin Clark, a new WNBA basketball player, is deserving of the attention. I mean, she's a record-breaking basketball player. But it is interesting for me to see how other artists and other players have responded to Taylor Swift and Caitlin Clark getting that amount of attention. And I've just been thinking, like, is there a lesson to be learned there for publishers in the game design and in the gaming space? If there's a game that's getting a ton of attention for a certain category, perhaps, is there a way that instead of getting jealous about that and comparing yourself to it, which I never think is healthy if you're just comparing yourself to another product, another person, is there a way to leverage that game's success for your game to get more attention as well? I guess that's the example there. So kind of a hodgepodge topic there. I haven't quite figured out how to approach it. But it's something I've been thinking about recently. I'm curious if you have any thoughts about that. If you've ever noticed maybe in any category of product, if you've noticed that one product gets a disproportionate amount of information of media attention compared to other products in that genre, not necessarily even other deserving products. Again, I think Taylor Swift, Caitlin Clark deserve the attention that they get. But are there any marketing strategies to kind of leverage that attention so that your product or your person, whatever you are creating or working on, or who you are, also gets a little bit of that attention too, and you can piggyback off of it a little bit? Again, random blog post. I don't know if I'll actually write it, but something on my mind recently. Just curious to see if you have any thoughts about that. Chad says, speaking of messing up setup pieces, I played a hilarious game of Clue with a couple kids where one of the kids put 2 rooms and 1 weapon card in the envelope instead of 1. That is, that'll definitely impact the game of Clue if that happens. Ian says, how do I stay so organized? Do you have so much pressure on you with so many facets of business and personal life? How do you deal with it so well? I don't necessarily know that I do deal with it so well. Maybe the public facing part of it it looks good. But I don't know. I have a bunch of little organizational apps and systems. I use sticky notes for daily checklist. I use Basecamp and for project management. I use some Google Docs for project management too. I use a lot of checklists. They're very helpful for me. And I use Trello also for keeping track of lists of things. So those are kind of digital solutions. A lot of digital solutions I think are helpful for me because I don't have a great memory. And so it's really helpful for me to have checklist of things so that I don't forget an important step in the process. Yeah. The Champion Faction says, I think that begs the question of what makes for a sequel in gaming. Movie sequels tend to extend the story of the original. Expeditions definitely does that, but the mechanisms are a factor too. And that's a good question. What does make a sequel? I do have a video about my favorite sequels, so games that follow up another game, and maybe have the feeling of that game while having new mechanisms and continue the story. I think that's the key, that it feels like a continuation of the story while not being the same thing. If it is the same thing, then it's a new edition, in my opinion, if it's a new edition. So like I actually just recently filmed a video about new editions of games. I think that's a different category than a sequel or a remake. Oh yeah, Mark, I was excited to see what you thought about Botany. You mentioned that. You got Botany on the table a few days ago. While the game had some good mechanisms and intentions, the not so good stuff didn't sit well with me. I'm sorry to hear that, Mark. What was your favorite part about it? So the theme of Botany, as far as I know, is that it is a plant collecting research game, but it also has a little bit of the supernatural to it, like maybe a Cthulhu thing. Let me know if that's the case. I think that's a neat mix of the two thematically. Chad says, I'm not sure if you heard that King of Tokyo Duel is going to be coming out, 2-player game. I'm really excited for this. It sounds like so much fun. I am curious about it. I just recently actually filmed a video about dual, duet, and duo games. And I mentioned King of Tokyo on that list, but I haven't played the dual version. Let's see. Joker ES says, it also brings about what the need is for a sequel if the sequel is similar. It makes sense for a game like Marco Polo that lacks a ton of expansion content, not for Scythe. Yeah, Scythe has a ton, like Scythe is a heavily extended game, unlike Marco Polo. And I'm curious with Marco Polo and with Dune Imperium, I'm curious if they continue to make and sell the original. That's often a sign that it's a new edition if they have stopped making the original versus a sequel where they continue to make both, like what we do with Scythe and Expeditions. Nate says, have you ever accidentally ran away with a victory? This is Nate speaking. I beat my buddy in Expeditions 114-37. That's a big victory. I was too focused on having fun melding 5 meteorites with Tatanka that I failed to realize I felt bad. I can relate to that. I can relate to feeling bad when you run away with something and someone else doesn't do nearly as well. Hopefully they still had a satisfying experience building something unique to them, a unique engine to their copy of their game of Expeditions. I'm sure it's happened, although I'm usually not the person who wins games. I probably win, I don't know, 10 to 20% of times at most when I play games. I did it with Spots one time. Spots is a game where when you achieve the win condition, you instantly win. It's a push your luck game. So on most turns of Spots, you have the potential of either significantly pushing the game forward or even winning the game. And I did it one time. I had like a sudden win in Spots that caught people off guard. And I enjoyed it. It's fun. Like it's fun to have those moments in a push your luck game. But I did feel a little bit bad because people were already planning their next turn. And then the game is just over when that happens. Yeah. Jeremy mentions for camping games, Hive and Seaside. Hive is one that I see suggested very often for outdoor games because it doesn't have cards. It doesn't blow away easily. It's a very small, compact game. Yeah. Champion Faction mentions Onitama. It does have cards, but that's true, but only 5 per game. Even with a light wind, you can probably pin down 5 cards per game. Chris says, will you be watching the Olympics in July? What sports besides soccer, which I know you like, do you enjoy watching? I enjoy watching the highlights for disc golf. I probably mentioned that a few times. Disc golf and soccer. I like highlights actually for a lot of sports. I rarely watch a full game of any sport, but I like watching the highlights of basketball games, of football games. Yeah, those are probably the other two that I regularly watch. But for any major highlight, major moment in a sport, I do enjoy watching it. I do really enjoy. I was a sprinter in high school, and so I really enjoy watching the 100-meter dash in the Olympics. So I'll definitely be paying attention to that. That's the main one that I'll be paying attention to. I don't follow a lot of other Olympic sports, even during the Olympics, but I'll still see if there's some big records being broken. I'll probably tune in for those clips. Carol says that she's really excited for Rolling Realms Redux. Thank you, Carol. She's going to start playing Sleeping Gods Distant Skies soon with her teacher friend for our summer campaign. That's awesome. Yeah, we had a good time playing through our first campaign of Sleeping Gods Distant Skies. Jokeria says Scythe has so much flexibility with the expansion content that choosing other games over it while having that content means you don't want a mechanically similar game. I think that's a good way to put it. I think that's a nice way to sum it up. Yeah, really, with the Rise of Fenris in particular, there's so many modules in the Rise of Fenris that you can add to any game of Scythe. That combined with the previous expansions, there's I think all the content that needs to exist for Scythe is already out there. I think the one type of content that I hear people that resonates with me when I hear people say it is that they want more factions, which I totally hear. But there are fan design factions that you can very easily print. And faction mats aren't dual layered, so you can print it and have almost, you can even paste it on a piece of cardboard if you want to, and have that same Scythe experience using those fan design factions, which I recommend that if you want to continue your experience with Scythe. More migraines. Wendy is chiming in here. I'm sorry, Wendy. She found that OTC products work well and an RX that is fantastic, but insurance doesn't want to cover it. The situation is headache all of its own. I'm sorry to hear that, Wendy. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that that caffeine can help with headaches, and I now drink a small cup of coffee every day, so maybe that has helped me not get headaches in recent years. But I think one of the over-the-counter pills that most people recommend, I'm forgetting what it is now, does have a little bit of caffeine in it. I usually just go with ibuprofen. That's what I found works for me. Nathan's also excited about rolling Realms Redux. I'm glad to hear that, Nathan. Ivan who has a migraine right now as we're recording this. I think migraines are caused by air pressure for him. In the summer when it's hot, hot water evaporates quickly, saturating the air and causing air pressure. The best thing we can do is go where air is thinner, like in the mountains. That's really interesting, Ivan. I have not heard that before, but I would gladly test out that theory. Yeah. I've noticed for me, the most common way that I get it as an adult, that I get migraines as an adult, is if I am in extreme heat, particularly early in the day. I don't know exactly why it's early in the day that it matters, but I have to be really careful about extreme heat early in the day. And that's why I've been trying to play my weekly round of disc golf really early in the morning before that heat hits. To try to prevent that from happening, and getting a good night's sleep and hydrating really, really well has made a good difference for me. Jean-Baptiste mentions a video that came out recently from Spider Forge. James over there did a video about expedition strategy tips, and James has amazing strategy tips about a number of different games, including expeditions, apiary. I think he did Wormspan recently, and he was actually appeared on a video with me a few months ago. It was great to have him join me for a video. All right, so here's some thoughts about the question of the day today, which is about how, well, I don't recap the question. You know what the question is. Jokeria says that positive press lifts all boats. Wingspan brought a lot of people into the hobby, even as it took the air out of the room. Yeah, that's a great thing. And I think I definitely saw some people getting, I saw some people getting a little envious and jealous of Wingspan. Why this game and why not this other game? But Wingspan can lift up that other game, just like Azul has lifted up abstract games, just like some of the major trick-taking games have lifted up all other trick-taking games. I think that's a great way to put it. Aaron says, acknowledge and learn from success, discuss and highlight what is working about it, emulate it to the extent that you can. So rather than comparing and getting jealous, learn from it. Yeah, learn from what makes that game work and what about that game's marketing is working well. Tim has a question. I'll come back to the question of the day here, but Tim says, if you had a record player in your office, what album would be your choice to spin today? That's a good question, Tim. I actually don't listen to music very often at all. Very, very rarely. I like to work in silence. When I am listening to something, like when I'm working out or driving, it's usually a podcast. But what would it be? Maybe it would be Taylor Swift. I mentioned Taylor Swift today, so maybe it would be some Taylor Swift. I don't think I've heard her new album yet, so I need to check that out. What about you, Tim? Do you have a record player in your office? Do you listen to music while you work? Joker points out that the opposite can be true too, that disproportionate attention, even though I've tried to mention it in a positive way, isn't always positive. It can be negative. Negative press, like for Mythic Games, the Mythic Games fiasco sinks the industry and removes confidence. The danger is that you don't know what news will get focused on, but lifting the industry is preferable. I definitely agree with that. I'm not mentioning them all, but I do see to Corey, who asked about games to take while camping or take outside. I see some more recommendations. Corey, you'll see them in the comments here. Chad has an interesting question here. Clue was the first game I played where I made a strategy. Growing up, did you ever develop a strategy that made you realize how to game the game? How to game the game? Trying to think of a game that I played when I was younger. I don't know if I have a specific game that comes to mind for that. Like I did learn about strategy by playing games like Risk, like Scotland Yard, Magic the Gathering when I was young. But I don't know if I had one that was about gaming the game. I don't know if that was my goal for most games. I think I realized fairly young that that if everyone was having a good time, that I got to play more games. And so I try to facilitate fun at the table when I could in my better moments when I was playing games growing up. Wendy says, when Taylor Swift was on the cover of Time with Her Cat, the shelter where I volunteer took some copycat pics with shelter cats and volunteers and shared on social media. Fun and got some donations. I love that example, Wendy. That is really, really cool. And you even tied it to Taylor Swift, which is awesome. That's really neat. I need to find a way to write these down. It's hard to write down these comments. Yeah, I'll have to find a way to go back and look at these comments after I'm done with the live cast. Ray said, related to Nate's comment about accidentally running away with a game, have you ever deliberately thrown a game or held yourself back to avoid beating or devastating other players? I'll sometimes do this when teaching a game I already know to new players. I definitely do it when I'm teaching, for sure. And sometimes when I'm playing a game that I'm ready to finish the game, I will give other players a heads up. I'll say, okay, on my next turn, I'm doing something that will trigger the end of the game. Or if I realize that I am about to take that last turn of the game, I might say to other players, do you all want another round? Do you want one more round? And then I'll finish the game on my next turn. I would really rather everyone have a good time playing the game than for me to win the game. That is always my priority. That everyone has a good time, including myself. I'm part of that. I'm part of that, having the good time too. But yeah, as I wouldn't say I've thrown a game, Ray, but I have made decisions, suboptimal decisions, because I want others to have a good time too, and because I'm worried that a decision that I might make might really ensure that someone else doesn't end the game well. Justin mentioned Skulls as a good game to take while camping. I agree with that. Zach says, do I enjoy any anime or manga, games or shows? My kids introduced me to Kaiju #8 show, and I love it. I don't watch a lot of anime, and I haven't read manga in a long time. I'm glad you're enjoying Kaiju #8. I have to check that out. But the show that comes to mind for me when I think about that is Arcane. I know it's not quite anime, but it is an animated show. I really, really enjoyed Arcane. I also enjoyed Avatar, The Last Airbender, the animated version. I enjoyed that quite a bit. Still haven't watched the live action version, but Arcane to me is like peak animated TV. I really, really loved it, and I'm looking forward to season 2 quite a bit. Stace of Spades says, if you could pick an IP to base a game on that has yet to be implemented, so I can't pick Red Rising, which would be my answer to this question otherwise, what would you pick? I think The Man in the High Castle would make for an interesting IP to base a game on. Yeah, I always love hearing how this question evolves over time. So one thing I thought about for Red Rising when I was choosing that IP was Red Rising was a decently big IP as a novel, but it wasn't so big that everyone had already heard of it. And so I wanted to pick something that I really loved, an IP that I loved, that was popular enough that we could probably leverage some benefit from existing fans, but that it was also something that wasn't so well known that I could introduce it to other people, introduce the novel series through the game. And I've heard from so many people that they've read the books because they heard about the game or because they played the game. I love hearing that. So it would be an IP like that. And there aren't many like that, really, like Red Rising, where it was really that sweet spot between the two in terms of the size of its fandom. So I don't have another one in mind right now, but I am interested in that sweet spot of IPs. And I think even more, I'm interested in creating my own worlds or our own worlds, depending on who creates them. But yeah, if that sweet spot is ever hit again, I'm intrigued by it. Mark says about botany, which he played recently. I really like the aspect of pick up and deliver as the main mechanism for botany. It's rare to see a game like it, so it was refreshing to play with that type of mechanism. That's cool. That's a mechanism that I usually don't gravitate towards, but I'm happy to see when games do it really, really well. Oh, this is cool. Fairly Odd Parent says, I attended the MLS game of FC Dallas versus St. Louis this past weekend. I'm pretty sure Dallas won that game too. Congratulations for the win. Did you see the game or the recap? Sad to see the injury of Pampo. I didn't see that. That is sad. It's sad to see whenever anyone gets injured. I think I just saw the score. I didn't see the recap of the game. Yeah, but that's very cool that you got to go to the game. Luke says, back when I played poker, I would let people win hands to keep them in the game because I like their company. I like that, Luke. Oh, interesting. Aaron says, I recently saw that soaking feet in hot water can help alleviate migraines. I've not heard that before. All these interesting techniques, and that's an easy one to try. Oh, no. Corey also has migraines. Deployment to Iraq in 2008 destroyed his sinuses, and now I have sinus issues and migraines weekly or more. Weekly migraines, I'm so sorry to hear that, Corey. That's a lot of migraines. That's what I was getting when I was a teenager, but as an adult, that would be devastating. I'm really, really sorry to hear that, Corey. Hopefully, maybe some of these techniques mentioned in the comments will help you the next time you get a migraine. Sean says, lots of folks here in Calgary resent the warm Chinook, is that how you say it? Wind, as they seem to trigger migraines for many. So that the warm, welcome to the rest of us in the winters, though. Yeah. Yeah, Mark was talking about this disproportionate question I have on the human nature is to look at the negative aspect of it, but if people rally to look at the positive, then it should benefit everyone involved. And I agree. Yeah, I think that's why I think there's a positive spin to be taken on this when there's and I don't see it as much for Taylor Swift. I've seen it a lot more for Caitlin Clark recently, where it is just very interesting to see how other players are responding to the amount of attention that she's getting. And I want to tread a very careful line here because there's a lot of other stuff going on with what's happening with Caitlin Clark. But it seems like that it doesn't need to be as negative as it needs to be. I think it could be a positive thing for a lot of other people. And just doesn't seem to be happening right now. The Dice Tower did a really negative and condescending review of Gentle Rain, but after I saw a lot of YouTubers playing it, I wonder if that was reverse advertising. Interesting. Yeah, I've seen a ton of people playing Gentle Rain recently. Condescending. That's really important. I'll have to watch that. Well, yeah, this is me playing into negativity, but condescending is a word that I don't see too often with the Dice Tower. I see some negativity, but it's their job to review things. Yeah, but you're right. That's neat to see that people almost responded to it by playing it and giving it more attention, which is great, especially if they enjoy the game. Tim does have a record player in his office. He's playing Anticipating the Dream Chaser by Rendezvous Point coming out this Friday. Oh, no, he's anticipating Dream Chaser. That's cool. I hope you enjoy it. Mark says, I believe that hard work shines well, so disproportionate attention is bound to happen, but look at the positive of it and spread hardworking qualities rather than think of it as attention seeking. I like that, Mark. Mark says, are there any more non-Stonemaier game promos coming, or was the last batch the last of the bunch? It was not. It was not the last batch. It's close to the end, but not quite the end. Yeah. Jared says, your comment about warning people about ending the game gives me some understanding about Scythe. My wife can destroy me inside because she's holding back on claiming stars. Then suddenly the game is over. Yeah, that is a tough thing about Scythe, that it can happen. Like, it's public information, for the most part, public information. You can see when the end of the game is coming, but it can still happen suddenly. And I do think that some of the resolution tiles in the win gambit address that. So, Jared, I would recommend trying some of those resolution tiles where it gives you a ton of different ways to end the game. And many of them give you a lot more notice in advance that the end of the game is coming. Before I end with questions, let's see if there's anything else to think about today. I think I've covered pretty much all the topics today. I did have a general question. Let me throw it out here right at the end. If you had the chance to go to either Australia or Singapore for 5 days, which one would you choose? Something I've been thinking about recently. I have opportunities to go to one of those two places, but not both. And I should mention that I have already been to Australia. I visited, and I know Australia is a big country, but this trip would be specifically to Sydney, where I have already been. I've been there. I went there around 20 years ago. So I've already been in Australia. So would you go, or would you recommend going, spending 5 days to Singapore or to Sydney, Australia? Let me know your thoughts. It's something I've been contemplating recently. Let's see. Monkey Builder Lab says, I forget, did the Pokemon company flatly reject your inquiry for a Wingspan style game, or did it just go unanswered? They said no. They said no, or someone there said no. I think it's a big company, but currently their answer for a Wingspan style game with the Pokemon IP is no. And so it was an answer no, not just a lack of responding. Yeah. She Nook or Nook and Cranny or book. I don't know, a couple different ways to pronounce Nook, I think. Let's see. Jean-Baptiste says, what Kickstarters have you backed recently or are looking forward to receiving? Lots that I'm looking forward to receiving. Undergrove, definitely Undergrove by Elizabeth Hargrave is one of mine. Jean-Baptiste also backed Dutch Renaissance Orange Shall Overcome. Undergrove is on my list. What else have I recently backed? I think there are a few. I recently backed the Merchants of the Dark Road expansion campaign, Secrets and Villages, and Santa's Workshop, and some puzzles. There's a lot of stuff in that campaign. I recently backed X Seekers of Fortune and the Secret Cabal Gaming Podcast and the Apostocracy campaign and the Earth Abundance campaign. Those are all, on Kickstarter. On GameFound, I need one place for all these things, but it's all different places now. Let's see what I am following my projects. What have I backed but not received? It's kind of, I think it's in reverse order, so I don't know if I'll easily find it. It's in alphabetical order. Mons and Mages is on here. I haven't received that yet. What else have I backed but not received? I am not seeing anything else here. Sorry. Yeah, just these are in alphabetical order instead of chronological for some reason. So yeah, those are a few of them. Hilder says Australia. Ariel says Australia. Wendy says Australia. Lots of Australia so far. Justin says slightly different direction. Apologies if you've discussed this in recent live plays, but what details can you share about the design day? I recently signed up and I'm excited to attend and hopefully bring a game to demo. Justin, hopefully you're getting email updates about it. You'll see, you should get monthly email updates about Design Day, Some More Games Design Day. And yeah, it's pretty much as advertised. It's a day where you get to bring a game to playtest, sign up in advance. There's steps to go through in advance if you want to playtest a game at Design Day. And if you've already signed up as the first step. And then it's also just a great day to talk about game design and play published games and just be in that creative space for like 12 hours is what happens on Design Day. Yeah. The details are in the emails though. Check out the emails and you'll see all the details about it. See, Australia, another pick for that. Singapore. Mark says Singapore. Australia. Okay, a lot of different picks here. Arama says, if you already went to Sydney, I would recommend Singapore. It's an amazing place, great food, architecture, and views. Ian also says, Australia personally, but if you had already been to one place, you would like to go someplace new. That is, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's where I go back and forth. Like I've already been to Sydney, but I haven't been to this part of Sydney or a certain part, all parts of Sydney. But yeah, I haven't been to Singapore at all. So that's, Hilda would go with the new to me situation. Nook and Cranny. Okay, Nook and Cranny. Shit, Nook. Mark says you can also visit Malaysia since they're connected by land and relatively near each other. That's true. They are connected by land, which I recently learned. I didn't know exactly where Singapore was until I looked it up for this potential trip. Tim says the Singapore has amazing architecture, great food and cocktails. Oh, I love good cocktails. And plenty of nooks and crannies to explore. It's always hot and humid, though. Pretty cool outdoor spaces, too, though. Okay, Carol says there's only one design email so far. Okay, sorry about that. I thought there were two, but only one so far. That's good to know. Thank you. Jared says he would avoid the language barrier, but I think English is widely spoken in Singapore, so I don't actually know that there is a language barrier there, but I could be wrong about that. But I'm pretty sure about that. Tim says pretty much everyone speaks English. Yeah, that's what I thought. But yeah, that's an ongoing question. Feel free to comment in more detail about your thinking about that, whether it's for me or for you. I'm happy to hear either way in the comments after I post this video. And yeah, thank you all for joining me today. As always, I love hearing your thoughts. I am sorry to hear that so many of you share the migraine affliction. Really sorry to hear that. Always happy to hear ideas for ways to alleviate migraines, to prevent them is most important, but also alleviate them after you already have them. Feel free to let me know in the comments here. Have a great day. Enjoy your treat of the day if you have one. And I'll see you in the Rolling Realms update coming soon, maybe today, maybe tomorrow. And I'll see you next Wednesday for the next live cast. Take care. Bye.